Welcome back to Chiefs fans before we were cool, and we're happy to be starting again this week.
The starters are back in, guys. This is for real. Not like that Broncos game, which was not for real.
Honestly, the best take I saw for that game was somebody said, "For all you new Chiefs fans, this is what it felt like before Andy Reid was here."
I mean, it was pretty bad. I mean, obviously, it goes beyond that. Like, obviously, they weren't even trying. Like, if you're watching the play calls, they're not doing anything. Like, they're not giving away any of their good plays. It's as
Yeah,
vanilla as it can be. There's nothing. They weren't going to give anything to tape on tape to any of their opponents. They weren't going to do anything really to try beat the Broncos. And the Broncos, like they're a professional football team under, Sean Payton. Like they're obviously in the playoffs. They're a 7 seed and Bengals and Dolphins should have won more games. I mean, it would have been the Bengals, I guess, because the
yeah.
Dolphins lost, but
And obviously, we live in a day and an age where hot takes get more views. But I've seen a lot of complaining on social media by Bengals fan pages that it's unfair for the Chiefs purposefully kept the Bengals out. But I agree with Travis Kelce's assessment in part that their strategy on Sunday had nothing to do with the Bengals. Um,
yeah,
that I think what you're like the defense was super vanilla because they were like, we're gonna give literally there's gonna be no tape from this game that
yeah.
anyone's gonna be able to use against us. And like honestly, this is the only thing I'll say about this. We could move on as far as I'm concerned, is that you don't blame a team for resting when they've got nothing to play for. Just play better the first half of the season, and you won't be in a situation where you need help.
Yeah, it'll be interesting for the Bengals going forward too. They fired Lou Anarumo,
Hmm.
who had figured out Mahomes a few times. Like he was the first one to really give Mahomes troubles in a few different spots defensively. And so anyway, we'll see if that affects things. I mean, their
Yeah,
defense was so bad this year. I mean,
yeah,
so he was probably part of that too, but it's hard to know what all goes on with those teams and what
yeah.
what made it come to be the way it was. But
Well, and it'll be
uh,
tough too to see like Jamar Chase is going to be super expensive because he played so well this season. Uh,
yeah,
and
they
they
didn't
can't keep
pay up.
Jamar and T. Higgins and build a defense. Like
Yeah,
they're gonna have to give somewhere. So
they're gonna have to make choices, and they're doing it. I mean, if they keep T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, they're gonna be building it differently than the Chiefs have, um, and the Bills have. So I doubt it'll work as well. I
mhm.
mean, that was kind of what the Chiefs had to do with Tyreek a little bit. And it's worked better for them, really, honestly, probably for as good as Tyreek was.
Yeah.
It's been better to try to allocate sources a little bit more balanced in the
Hmm.
defense because Patrick Mahomes can help the offense. He can't help the defense. Joe Burrow can
Right.
help the offense. He can't help the defense. And
Right.
there are some times, but the other reality they're facing though, which is sobering and maybe difficult. Joe Burrow, like I mean, the whole offense as a whole, the team as a whole was not very good without T. Higgins. Like we have two seasons of evidence that they're not very good without a really good second receiver.
Yeah. And
At least not that elite. But they could probably figure it out. I don't know.
yeah.
I would probably let T. Higgins go get paid somewhere else. And
And obviously I've had my share of criticisms of the Bengals. I've think recovered from last season on the podcast where I haven't been quite as anti-Bengal podcast. And
yeah,
I do think Joe Burrow is really good, but I also think like Joe Burrow has had his entire career in Cincinnati probably the best receiving core. And it's not to say he can't pivot, but I watch and like he throws a lot of 50-50 balls, but Jamar Chase and T. Higgins make it more like 60-40. So it's like, of course, you're going to do that when you have them, but you have to see how he's going to adapt and grow as a quarterback if he doesn't necessarily have that powerful of a receiving core, you know?
we'll see. I mean, he's so good. And
Mm.
I said they haven't been as good with T. Higgins. technically, I mean, they had multiple games where like, Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow went off when
Yeah.
it just the defense was so bad this year. So I don't know. I think Joe Burrow is really good. I think he has a bit of an ego issue, but like who doesn't
Mhm.
when you're that good? I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't really have an issue with Bengals as much. Maybe it's just because we've been winning more recently
Yeah.
and I don't
Yeah.
interact with them as much as you seem to do. It's just like Joe Burrow's really good, but their defense was really bad, and you can't win 9 games and expect to be in the playoffs. Like you
Yeah.
can't. Like it happens, but you can't expect that.
Yeah. They
Um,
feel like the 2021 Chiefs a lot of ways. Um,
yeah,
with the elite offense, but still losing games, scoring over 50 points, that kind of thing.
yeah.
Like the so
They need a little bit more defense, a little bit
yeah.
more balance, and will they get it with the big contracts? We don't know. Also, the Bengals tend to not pay just the ownership and things like that. They don't pay as much guaranteed money and a variety of other things. But
Yeah.
so we'll see how that goes. But we don't have to talk about them really. We should
Right?
probably focus. I mean, we could talk about the game, but obviously we've already kind of said it. The Chiefs weren't trying. They were playing all their backups, and Denver was right because Denver had to win.
Yeah.
So there was no incentive on our part to play any differently. So we didn't.
Right. And
Um,
obviously we're expecting to be playing you know, let's see, the Steelers, are they playing the Texans? Is that how it goes? Or is
okay,
it
so the matchups are the Steelers versus the Ravens,
Steelers versus
the
Ravens?
Texans versus the Chargers. That switched because the Chargers won and the Steelers lost. And then the Broncos versus the Bills. So our four possible opponents would be the Broncos if they somehow beat the Bills, the Steelers, the Texans, or the Chargers. So
Okay.
those are the four teams we could possibly face.
And honestly, I mean, the one thing I'll say about the Chargers is playing a team 3 times in a year is tough. Um,
Yeah, I think
it's
that honestly, of all the teams, I would least want to face the Chargers. I'm
yeah,
most worried about facing the Chargers of those four teams.
yeah. Honestly, I would love the Broncos to win. I don't see that's really likely, but it's like the one team, I mean the Chargers, I think of the ones you listed could be the most likely to beat us. I mean, I will say one big thing is our offensive line has been significantly better since the shift. Um, but obviously the Bills are a scary team, and if anybody knocks off the Bills, that would be that would be fun. That'd be fine by me. Um, but I also, if we have to go through the Ravens and the Bills again to make it to the Super Bowl, so be it. If we have to beat all those teams again and then we three-peat, like I'd like to see people like explain that away. I
Right.
mean they'll try. They'll say it was rigged, but
Well, the nice thing about where we're at is that we won't have to face both the Ravens and the
that's true.
Bills this year.
Yeah.
Um, so that's really nice. As far as the format, I would say, as far as an ideal situation that I think could possibly happen, I don't know. Maybe a little bit more likely than the Broncos beating the Bills. Although, I mean, I don't know. The Bills are like sometimes in the playoffs, like it just seems like they don't always make the defensive adjustments other teams do.
Hmm.
Like Lou Anarumo and Steve Spagnuolo, like they always have a lot of aces up their sleeves when they play the playoffs. Um, the Bills, I just feel like they play their game. They're good at their game, but when you have a really good offense, like there's ways to figure it out. I don't know. I think there might be something more to it, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the Bills, they kind of the Bills at least showed an ability to do different things. Like they played the Chiefs man man,
Yeah.
and they did a few things differently this year, so maybe it will be different. But
Well, and to your point though, like in the playoffs, anything can happen, right?
yeah,
Like it's one game, and sometimes
yep,
one game doesn't go your way.
yep. I would say the Steelers beating the Ravens would be the ideal situation in my mind.
Yeah.
I would like to face the Steelers or the Texans. Um, would be the two teams I would prefer to face. And the
Mhm.
Steelers, they didn't win the most recent fight with the Ravens, game with the Ravens, but they did beat them the time before that. And the Steelers have tended to be one of the teams that Lamar Jackson has struggled against.
Yeah.
So it is possible that Lamar Jackson has another kind of, playoff slump game and loses. And and then we face the Steelers, which I think we would been beat pretty soundly.
Yeah.
Their offense is just not consistent enough, and yeah, their defense is good, but the offense
Yeah.
is not consistent enough to do.
And that's one of the examples in like the Steelers, I feel like match up better against division rivals, because
Yeah,
you do see them more. They've got a good defense, and that tends to give Lamar Jackson a little bit of a harder time. I also feel like Lamar Jackson, and maybe this is just like perceiver's bias on my part, but like it seems like when we played them in the playoffs last year, it feels like he when things get hard tries to do it all himself, and he's really talented, so he gets close to doing it. But then like they abandoned the run in the second half. Besides Lamar Jackson's running,
right.
and he still like honestly he still runs a lot, but it's I think he can get so far like he feels like he has so much to prove maybe that he can be a hindrance to himself a little bit in playoff games that way. Um,
Yeah,
that's easy for me to say sitting on a couch, but
easy to say on the couch. I mean, it's also easy to say like if two plays go differently in that Ravens game, we won by 7, but
mhm.
like, we had the Snead thing, uh, Snead poking out the thing. If Zay Flowers doesn't taunt, and I don't like to play the what if so much, but I would
Mhm.
just say last year I felt fortunate to have beaten the Ravens. Um, so like there's a level where that's true. He did too much and they probably should have kept running more. But there's also a level where, look, things just didn't bounce their way, you
Yeah.
know. He shouldn't have thrown that interception that was on him, but um, it's hard, it's hard with stuff, with other
Mhm.
person, they get the catch and then it's like, oh, they're so good, like crazy.
Mhm.
Look how amazing it is. It's always funny to me where there's like a pass and it's like, well, he knew his guy was going to get it. Like, and you see, it's like, oh, if that DB would have turned around, it would have been an interception. Like, you're just like,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
you'll have throws like that, but I don't want to give people too much credit
When
for
a
that.
receiver is double covered and they come down with it, it says a lot more
Yeah,
about the receiver. Now, granted, I will say there are some noticeable exceptions.
yeah,
When Calvin Johnson was playing, I feel like if he's double covered, you still try, like because like he's so good. Like there's obviously exceptions,
yeah,
but sometimes the quarterback gets way more credit than they deserve for those kind of things.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
just like sometimes the quarterback gets more blame for picks than they deserve sometimes,
Yeah,
like
yeah. We don't know if the receiver ran the wrong route or
yeah,
really should have recognized the coverage and made an adjustment to the route.
yep.
Like,
Or and it hits the receiver in the hands and it's bounced off for a pick six, you know?
well, right. I think most people, at
Yeah, I
least,
know
I mean,
that.
if they're looking at the stats of the year, they'll recognize that it's not a good,
Yeah.
not the quarterback's fault. But yeah, the Texans, I just think, they're kind of one-dimensional. They lost Tank Dell, who's just kind of getting back into that when he got injured again out for the season. So, I mean, you just have one really good receiver
Yeah.
and and a quarterback who's needs a year probably to adjust. Defenses have adjusted to him. I think
Yeah.
CJ Stroud's still a really good quarterback. He'll be better next year
If you're a
when
Texans
he gets
fan,
a little bit more
you
used
should
to
be
it.
really encouraged by your team and how they're doing, right? But
Yeah,
I do think he's CJ Stroud is going to continue to develop and get great, but I feel like they're a team that is a little too inexperienced to really think that they've got a Super Bowl run in them this year.
yeah. They have a pretty good defense and they play in the AFC South, which was just so bad this year. So
Mhm.
that's why they're in
Now,
playoffs as a 4 seed. Like I said, I think the Chargers are the scariest to me. I think Denver, Denver and the Chargers, I mean, it's the same thing like you've been saying all season. It's hard to beat the same team three times. They both have really good defenses. Their offenses have had times or moments when they've been really good.
Hmm.
I'm not too worried about either of them. I think we would have at least a 60+% chance of beating. I'd probably say like 75% chance of beating the Broncos and like 65 of the Chargers. Maybe that's a little too low. I don't know,
Yeah.
but it's we'll see kind of how that goes and which team we end up facing. It's no longer, the AFC South is just really bad, which is kind of funny. This is the year we get, we dominate and get the one seed. Like as far as wins go,
Yeah.
is the year that the AFC was actually pretty good with
Yeah. Yep.
three playoff
And the
teams.
AFC, yeah, AFC West, three teams in the playoffs. Better than any, like, I mean, if the Broncos had lost, right? They're very similar to the AFC North had the Bengals been in it because there's three teams that are really good
Yeah.
and one team that's garbage. Um, so because you got the Browns for the AFC North and you got the Raiders for the AFC West. Uh, so,
Yes. So
but
yeah, the AFC North and AFC West now are the toughest divisions probably.
yeah.
So kind
Um,
of like the NFC North. Yeah, with the
yeah.
Vikings and the
Which
the
actually, before I ask this, did you have any brother wonders for today?
Oh, I actually forgot to ask my
All
brother to
right.
wonder.
No worries, because I have a
Oh,
couple
but
questions, and if you didn't have anything,
oh,
but go
actually I
ahead.
do have some
Okay.
questions. It's not my brother per se. Brother-in-law wonders.
Oh.
That's right. This is the question. Why does Mahomes run out of the pocket so often?
Um, I haven't looked enough does Mahomes run out of the pocket more than Lamar Jackson, more than Josh Allen?
Yeah, I mean that's a good point. I think I would say that this year, so Mahomes has gone through a few iterations. When he first played, he would get out of the pocket a lot and look for some sort of crazy, improv play. Once his first reads didn't go through, he like gets out of the pocket and he tries to buy time to see Tyreek get open or something.
Mhm.
Um, recently, in recent years, he's gotten more and more. I'm going to stay in the pocket for the last couple years since Tyreek has been gone, and that's been better for him. He's still really good. It makes him a little bit more consistent. Um, now, this year, it is true that he's been getting out of the pocket or bailing on the pocket occasionally. Some of that's probably instincts, habits from before, but some of it's just been the O line this year has not been very strong.
Yeah.
So, as a general question, I would just say I think it's more of a product of the offensive line
Yeah.
not being very good this year that has kind of forced him to be a little bit nervous and not be able to step into his throws and
Yes.
be a little bit more consistent that way.
But I will say, like, especially having lived through like the Alex Smith era, like one thing that's really nice about how Mahomes plays that is, yeah, it's good when he can stay in the pocket longer when our O line is better. But also, I appreciate that while he does sometimes scramble for yards, most of the time what he does is he scrambles to give time for a play to develop. Whereas like Alex Smith, like, okay, first, second, third reads not there, pockets collapsing on fourth and 10 or third and 10, and he runs for 3 yards. Like, so it doesn't really help you a whole lot. Obviously not taking a sack is always a good thing, but it's like um Mahomes, while he can run the ball, he also, when the pocket collapses, he runs to extend the play and give more time for something to develop, which is a good thing. I mean, you see Josh Allen does that a lot too.
Yeah, yeah, it's really hard to take down Josh Allen. I
Yeah.
feel for them. Um, and Mahomes, he has kind of an uncanny sense of kind of what these things are.
Hmm.
He's always looking for a pass, and he forces DBs to wait for him to
Yeah.
cross the line of scrimmage. So that's That's a
And I,
good part of what he
granted, I
does.
don't watch a ton of other teams unless it's like exciting games, but he was the first quarterback I ever saw who, when they're scrambling to the left or the right and kind of deciding if they're going to throw or pass, who would also like look behind them to see if someone was coming. Like
Yeah.
I was like, whoa, I didn't know you could do that.
Yeah, he just has a sense for he sees the field pretty well. He scans it very quickly. And yeah, there's a lot of reasons why Mahomes is really good. Like it's not just something Chiefs fans made up
Yeah.
or commentators made up. Like there are things he does that are just incredible and off balance throws, his accuracy, but some of the concerns he's just been able to mitigate,
Hmm.
like as far as people didn't think it would translate, he wouldn't be as accurate, enough, things like that. Like Caleb Williams, part of why he's so hyped is he does a lot of the same things Mahomes did in college. Now, is it going to translate to the NFL? I don't know, right?
Yeah.
It's a that's a big transition, but he did um he's going to have to grow into the
Yeah.
accuracy and do some things Mahomes had to learn too,
Well, and Mahomes gives Alex Smith a lot of credit, but we'll never really know how much like obviously Mahomes has all the physical talent in the world, but you
Yeah,
wonder how much of a benefit it was for him to sit a year with someone as methodical and as a student of the game as Alex Smith was. Like Alex
yeah.
Smith is not nearly as talented as Mahomes, but knew the game really well. And so you wonder like if that helped kind of balance Mahomes to give him the best of both worlds.
Yeah, honestly, like sitting a year in training, I think is so underrated. I know the Patriots kind of tried to do that with Drake May, and I thought that was a fun way to do it. Like let, the backup quarterback play 8 games and then have him come in.
Mhm.
That could work too. But I think Mahomes,
Yeah.
between the mentorship and just the year of development and study,
Yeah.
where people aren't figuring him out, and then by the time they are, he is mature enough to make some adjustments.
Yeah.
Um, again, I say figure people out. Quarterbacks have, within about 8 games, it takes about 8 games for a defensive coordinator to kind of have a sense of what a quarterback wants to do and ways to take away their favorite throws and things like
Mhm.
that. And they had no tape on Mahomes really until he was playing and lighting the world on fire, in 2018. So um,
Yeah, it's kind of funny to look back at
built a
clips
lot
from
of
that
confidence
game
probably.
when
Yeah.
he started against the Broncos, the last week of his rookie year. Like at the time, I don't remember a lot of people talking about it, but like when you look back and you see some of the highlights now, you're like, oh yeah, like that was the tip of the iceberg. Um,
Yeah. Well, he was doing things that were breaking certain rules that you're just not supposed to do as a quarterback. So as you look at it, especially with one game sample size, you might think he got lucky with some of those throws
yeah.
and some of those decisions and things like that. But you definitely, yeah, look, hindsight's 2020, and you could definitely see some of the seeds there. Um, yeah. So we have the Chargers and like I said, I think the Chargers and Broncos, I think for very much the reasons you said, good defenses. We've seen them twice already this year. You could have the ball bounce the wrong way in either of those teams. Not my favorite 7 and 5 seeds, that you would face.
Yeah.
I think they're really good. Like I said, I think the Chargers are better than the Texans, and I expect my guess is that we face the Chargers. Um, because I just think the Bills are a step above the Broncos, and I think like I said, I think Pittsburgh could do an upset. That would be my ideal scenario, but um,
Do you
you
think
still, if
like,
you're, it's more than 50,
yeah.
obviously. Like the Ravens have a pretty good chance, high probability of winning, just with the way that Pittsburgh's kind of imploded over the last few games.
We've talked about this before, I think. One of the odd things about how the playoffs work in football is like you could, in theory, if your division is bad enough, you could have a losing or just a 500 record, basically. I guess with 17 games you can't, but you can have a really bad record and still make the playoffs and still get home field advantage, right?
Yeah,
But it's also then it was like even if it's not just that, it's crazy to me that the Vikings, had they won, they're the first seed, and because they lost, they're the
They
fifth
have a
seed.
bye. Yeah.
Yeah. Like
Having a bye to having to travel to who's the NFC they're facing?
who was
The Rams.
the Rams? Yeah.
Oh, that is it's a big jump because the Rams are pretty dangerous.
And it's like the other hand, I get it, like straight up record would not be right either because for instance the like well it worked the Chiefs it doesn't really apply but like the Ravens are in a really hard division compared to the like the Texans so like if the Ravens hadn't like obviously they're the number two in this case but actually the Bills are number two but you see what I'm saying like if
Yeah.
like division makes it harder but it's also like but man it's so crazy to think you win a game you're the number one you lose the game you're the number five when you still have a better record than all the other teams
Yeah.
besides the number one.
Yeah, that those are the times where it feels real bad. But
Not as bad as the
see how the
college football
Vikings go.
playoffs,
I
though.
mean, the Chiefs traveled last year
Yep.
and they won. So
Yeah.
we'll
And
see how that
honestly,
goes.
even if the Vikings lose their first game, this season was a success for them based
Mhm.
on their whole, quarterback situation and everything. Like, I don't think anybody expected them to be as good as they were. Um,
Good old Sam Darnold. They'll just
yeah.
have to figure out what to do next year when you have Sam Darnold playing so well.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think if you look at like kind of what happened in Atlanta, maybe you just go to JJ McCarthy because it seems like it's probably the system as much as the quarterback. But um,
Yeah.
anyway,
Did now
well,
I can't remember, sorry, but the Falcons did not make they didn't win, right? And they did not make I
no,
kind of
no, they
was
did not.
surprised as I was wondering if going into like halfway through the game, I part of me was wondering if the game's not going well midway through the third, are they going to put Cousins back in? Um, and they didn't, right? And so it was a
It was
little
a close game for the
yeah,
Atlanta. I mean, the Bucks won anyway, so at that point it didn't matter.
didn't matter, but
But yeah, Penix jumped in and he looks pretty good. So, everybody gave him a hard time for picking him with the eight pick. Still think it was probably a mistake. Um, but we'll
yeah,
see how it goes for them. But yeah, we'll see kind of how that goes. Any upsets you're looking at as far as the other teams? I mean, I kind of we've talked about Bills, Broncos a little bit.
let me be reminded. I have a hard time remembering the NFC. Um, so just give me a second here.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think the Chargers being the Texans would really be an upset. So
No,
with the NFC, you have the Commanders and Bucks, the
yeah,
Packers and
I
Eagles,
feel
and the
like
Vikings and Rams.
I really feel like even though it would still be considered one for the Steelers, I feel like the only one that's a legitimate upset in the AFC is the Broncos and the
Right.
Bills.
Yep.
Yeah, we've talked
Uh,
about that. I think the other ones,
oh, I mean Steelers and Ravens, that would still be an upset,
yeah, I
right?
mean, I think it would still technically be an upset, but what I'm saying is like you expect them to split a game every year, like,
Okay.
and so that's
Yeah.
why what I'm saying where it's like as far as what is like crazy to imagine.
Right. I can
Um,
see it happening. I mean, I already said that, so
yeah. I mean, I feel like honestly, even though Bucks are number three, I think Bucks Commanders can go either way. Probably the biggest upset that I feel like, Rams Vikings. I mean, the Packers beating the Eagles is probably the biggest upset that there could be.
probably. Yeah.
Because the other games just feel like the teams are, you know, like yeah, I feel like the Vikings should beat the Rams, but I'm not gonna be surprised
Right.
if they don't. And even that,
Well, the Rams have been probably pretty close to the Vikings
yeah,
when they've had their receivers.
yes,
So when they've had Puka particularly, but
yeah,
even Cooper Kupp and Puka, they didn't have either receivers for a long time. And it's just been pretty clear that they're a different team when they have their two top receivers. Even if Cooper Kupp hasn't been
yeah,
getting as many yards recently, he blocks and he does a bunch of other stuff really well. And
yeah.
people have to respect him. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I
And
agree with you. The Packers Eagles would be a big upset, but I mean, the Packers can get hot. They're a pretty well coached team. It's the playoffs, anything could happen.
yep.
The Eagles have been really, really good recently, but I wouldn't be surprised if they dropped one. Like,
And
I
the
don't know.
Commanders would technically be an upset on the Bucks, but I feel like that game is the one that to me I would not be surprised by either team winning. Like it's just
I think they're kind of the same. They're both
yeah.
really good. They just I think the Bucks. Well, I don't even know if the Bucks defense is that much different. Yeah, they're kind of the same teams.
Yeah.
So we'll see how it
I
goes.
I mean, I love to see Baker Mayfield succeed, just in light of everything that happened. It's like it's really fun. So hopefully they can do some stuff.
That'd be
But
fun. Washington has not had a lot of fun recently, so
yeah, that's true. Either of those teams would be a good story.
yeah,
So
you gotta love it. You gotta love it. Or like what was it, the thing where it had Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield, and I can't remember the other quarterback. It was the Carolina Panthers,
oh
and
yeah.
now they're all in the playoffs or something. It's
Yeah.
just like doing really well. So
Yep. All
anyway,
right. Well, looking
well,
forward
we'll look
to
forward to seeing who our opponent is.
yeah.
Uh, we appreciated the backups coming in and
Yep.
putting on a pretty good show. Pretty
Feel
good
very
show.
rested.
We
Um,
feel very
and
rested.
we literally did not give anyone any film to work on.
No
Uh,
film.
So
No film.
we accomplished our
We are
goals.
true fans. We are dedicated
Yep.
to the Mahomes clap. So let's see who we face next week, and I'll be excited to talk to you about that
Yep.
when we know who the opponent is.
See you then.